It's the final day of August 2022, and it's been a day now since we learned that Mikhail Gorbachev died. He died yesterday in Russia, and got me to thinking about that day in 2005, which was October 27th, when Mr. Gorbachev came to DePauw as my guest of the Oven Lecture Series, and I spent the day with him. As it happened, the president, Bob Bottoms from DePauw, could not make it to the Putnam County Airport to greet our visitors, so he sent me, and I have these cool photos. You kind of feel like a head of state as Gorbachev ambles off the private plane and down the stairs. There you are to greet him. Couple of interesting stories, and there were a bunch that day. So at the Putnam County Airport, they may have 3, 4, maybe 5 rooms that you can rent out, overnight if you're a private pilot or something. You're flying, and then you got to fly out the next day. We had reserved 2 for Gorbachev and his team. Unbeknownst to us, Gorbachev's daughter came along on the trip, and so when he got off the plane, one of the first things passed along to me through the interpreter was, "We need an extra room," which was a problem because the other 3 rooms there were taken. So I had to go up and knock on a door and see if some people would leave for a while, and they were so gracious. They did. I explained to them that Mikhail Gorbachev was in town, the man who brought down the Iron Curtain, and it would sure be swell if his daughter could, use the room for a while, and I'm still not sure how I pulled that off, but it did happen. Second thing that happened was they had told us Gorbachev would not need lunch because he was coming in at it was like 3 in the afternoon, 2 in the afternoon. I can't remember what time it was. Yeah, it must have been more like 1. Anyway, he needed lunch, and they've got a little grill in the Putnam County Airport, which is not really a public airport. It's more of a private airport. I may have that wrong, but it's very small. And the little restaurant there was closed because it was past the noon hour and people were, wrapping up their meals. I had to go back and convince the guy who was cooking to stay open for a while, actually reopen, so that Mr. Gorbachev and his friends could have a meal. And as I left, because I had to go back to campus and deal with some things, I saw Gorbachev and 3 other Russian guys in a room eating hamburgers with guys with John Deere hats all around them. It was, I wish I'd had a photo of it. It was before cell phones, so I couldn't take a picture that day. And then the third thing is I was told that Gorbachev had a penchant for, and I heard this from other people too, but I think Miami of Ohio told me, that he goes over. Everything goes over. So you set up a schedule where he's got to do certain things while he's on campus, but if he goes over, then whatever's at the tail end of the schedule gets truncated and you're kind of in trouble. His speech went at least 15 minutes long, and we had a news conference scheduled backstage after the speech, and I hustled him into the room, and I went to the microphone and told the assembled reporters that because the speech had gone long, we'd only have 10 minutes, which in news conference terms is a hiccup. I mean, it doesn't really almost make sense to do it, but it was promised and people were there, so I was going to give them something. And Debbie Knox, then at Channel 8, my former colleague and friend, asked the first question about the Iraq War, and I think his answer took 7-8 minutes, so there goes my news conference. So I stepped to the microphone after he finally finished answering the question, and he gave a very elaborate answer and said, "We only have time for one more." With that, Mr. Gorbachev, who pretends he doesn't understand English, or that's my assumption anyway, because there were times during his visit where he clearly got what I said. And before the interpreter could relay to him what I had said, he went, "Nyet, nyet, nyet." And the interpreter then stepped in with, "I'm the president here. I will tell you how things are going to go." And so like Charlie Brown, I put my tail between my legs and got out of the way and let Gorbachev finish his news conference, which wound up going about 20 minutes, again, creating problems with the schedule. So as we're getting down from the little dais we had set up for the news conference, Gorbachev goes by me and goes, something in Russian. And the interpreter says, "Dictator." Well, I had to escort Gorbachev to his next event. And I stopped him and I said, "Mr. Gorbachev, you got to know something. I spent 20 years in journalism, and I've spent 20 years in higher education." Well, at that point, it was more like 5, so 20 plus 5. And I am all about open discussions, free speech, people having access, all that jazz. But the people who you're going to meet last, and the event that we're going to have to squeeze down because these other things went too long, this event is where you're going to meet the donors and the people who are our trustees and the people that you know, you need to schmooze with. And so I said, just know that I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm trying to make everybody happy. And he hugged me, to his credit. So I guess I was a dictator for only a brief moment. But I thought I'd put those stories down just because the guy was a real character. And in fact, when we got him to the final event, he darted out a side door and was going down a street in Greencastle, and his aides had to chase him down. You know, there's security concerns, but he was almost like an 8-year-old kid. He'd just kind of get tired of things and decide, I'm going to leave here, do something else for a while. But that was a pretty magical day. My parents were in for that. Had probably 3,000 people in the gym at DePaul, and it got a lot of coverage. It was a really terrific day for the university, and I think for Putnam County and for Indiana to have Gorbachev, who'd been in the state in the past, but back for a really meaningful day. And anyway, I just wanted to say, you know, that guy was 91. He's been pretty quiet lately, and the early reports suggest he'd been ill for a while, but it's tough to see these icons go. And this is a person who really changed the world. And I was in the Soviet Union in 1988. I could see the change coming. No one really believed it could happen, but it did. And it was largely because Mikhail Gorbachev got out of the way and let things happen. And, you know, the problem with most totalitarian governments is they stay in the way and they ensure that any change can't be meaningful and certainly can't lead to any kind of regime change. So much credit to Mr. Gorbachev. I think a lot about Tim Oven as I tell these stories too, because I know he had a great day, and Tim passed away in January. The world's changing on us, but you know, it's like Ecclesiastes. Nothing is more beautiful or sad than generations changing hands, and that's what we do. See you, friends.